Hello, friends. This week in worship, the theme was around mercy. The text was Micah 6:8, where we are called to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. And out of the silence and in the sharing, there was this recognition that it's such a crucial time for us to show mercy alongside justice, and just how hard it is to muster up the energy and the willpower to be merciful in our sometimes broken world. In thinking about this idea of the inward light of Christ that gives us a spirit of truth and a spirit of power and a spirit of unity, I'm mindful that we really are given the capacity, the power to do two things that I'll talk about by way of story today. That we are given the power to punch holes in the darkness, and we are given the power to be stone catchers in the world. Robert Louis Stevenson was the author of Treasure Island, and he lived in 19th century Scotland. And he loved as a boy watching the lamplighter's go about their work of taking their ladder and their torches and setting the street lights ablaze so that people could see at night. And one evening he was at the window and his parents said, "Robert, what on earth are you looking at?" And he said, "Look," with excitement. That man, he's punching holes in the darkness." I think those of us who are activists, who are a part of the religious society of Friends, love the notion of being people who punch holes in the darkness. We want to see the world mended. We want to see peace and justice happen in our world. We want to see people treated with a spirit of justice. We want to see patterns of racism and oppression dismantled. And so this work of punching holes in the darkness is sort of part and parcel to our understanding of faith. For those of us who maybe aren't activists, however, there's another healing work, a powerful work that can be done that's captured in Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy. If you've not read the book, it's one I really recommend, where this lawyer who's working against capital punishment is he's visiting a court, trying to get a fellow from being executed who was wrongly convicted of a murder. And day after day, he's visiting this court, and he sees this woman who's out in the waiting room. She's there day after day, and he doesn't recognize her as somebody who's a part of the trial. And eventually, falls into a conversation with her and asks her story. And she talks about how several years ago her grandson had been killed by some other boys, and that death had just radically changed her life and broke her heart. And she went to the trial of her grandson's killers, hoping that seeing them being punished would make a difference for her. But in the midst of them being convicted and sent away to prison for life, she found that she didn't have healing there, and she saw the grief for the family, and her own grief sort of multiplied by this compounding of this brokenness. And so she felt called from that point on to just go and sit in the court and to be there for people who are experiencing this great grief. And her call specifically came out of this idea that we live in a world where we are so quick to cast the first stone, and there needs to be someone's who are there to help absorb those stones that are being thrown at others, to catch them in some ways, by being a person that others can lean on in their grief and in their pain and in their anguish. I think we're given the capacity to do both of those things, and they're both so integral to this idea of making a difference, of making God's light witnessed and available in the world. But I recognize that I can't, and nobody that I know simply has the capacity to muster up their ability to punch holes in the darkness on their own, or to be able to catch stones that are being thrown at others. And so I'll leave you this week with a reminder from William Penn, who reminds us that we are called to not do this work on our own, but rather to do it in the strength that God has given us. He says, when you come to your meetings, that is, when you gather together as the people of God for worship, what do? Do you gather together bodily only? Kindle a fire, compassing yourselves with sparks of your own kindling, and so please yourselves? Or rather, do you sit down in the true silence, resting from your own will and workings, and wait upon the Lord? And with your mind fixed in that light, wherewith Christ has enlightened you and prepares you, in your spirits and souls to make you fit for service. When we really dwell in that inward light and experience that power, then I think we're given the capacity to punch the holes in the darkness that God has called us to and to catch the stones that others need us to catch. Bless you in your work this week.